The staff of Sandhills Broadcasting, WFJA, and WWGP, along with The Rant, welcomes you to our local candidate interviews Monday through Thursday of this week, and again on Monday, October 12th, beginning at 12:30 each day. We will interview candidates from 4 featured local races live on WFJA and WWGP, with the interviews also streaming live on the Facebook pages of WFJA and The Rant. Today we feature the race for North Carolina House of Representatives, District 51, with Republican candidate John Sauls and Democratic candidate Jason Kane. We now take you to our studio and interviewer John Ramsberger.
Good afternoon and welcome to Day 2 of our local candidate interviews, brought to you live by Sandhills Broadcasting, WFJA and WWGP, The Rant, with video production from Brick Capital Video. We're here at the studio at WFJA. I'm John Ramsberger with Sanford Real Estate and your host for today's interviews. Before we start with our first interview, I remind you that you can listen to our interviews today on WFJA 105.5 FM, WWGP 1050 AM, and 95.1 FM. These interviews are also video streaming live on the WFJA's Facebook page, as well as on the Facebook page for The Rant. Today, we will talk with the 2 candidates running for North Carolina House of Representatives, District 51. This district covers parts of Lee and Harnett counties. The 2 candidates are incumbent Republican John Sauls of Sanford and Democratic candidate Jason Kane, also of Sanford. We will start today's session with Republican John Sauls. John, welcome to WFJA and for our candidate interviews.
Thank you, John. Good to be here.
So, John, please tell those that have tuned in today about yourself, such as your background, why you're seeking re-election to the NC House.
All right, I'll be glad to. Well, I'm John Sauls and married to my wife, Marty, and we have 3 grown children that are married, and we have 4 grandchildren, John. That's our claim to fame. But as far as my background, I was a former terminal manager for Keenan Transport Company in Apex, North Carolina, and left that profession to go full-time in the ministry and pastored Crossroads Ministries in Broadway for 21 years. Mm-hmm. And during the time that I was pastoring Crossroads, I was elected in 1998 for a 4-year term as Lee County Commissioner. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that term, I was asked to run for the North Carolina House. I ran in 2003 and was elected and served 2 terms from 2003 to 2006. The church I pastored had doubled in attendance to 4 years I was a commissioner, and then doubled in attendance to 4 years I was in the House. So I had to go into a second building program, so I didn't run in 2006. 10 years later, in 2016, after 22 years of ministry, I retired from the church and ran in 2016 and was reelected to the House again. And so I've been there since 2017 and currently in office. Mm-hmm. I am serving currently as on the 7 committees in the North Carolina House. Mm-hmm. In the full appropriations, I'm vice chair. I am chair of the Community College Committee, and I'm chair of Education Appropriations. I also serve on Energy and Public Utilities, and I'm a chair of the Ethics Committee, and I serve in Judiciary, and I am vice chair of the Redistricting Committee. And currently I'm endorsed to date by the North Carolina Troopers Association, North Carolina Right to Life. I've been named the North Carolina Jobs Champion by the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce, and I've been endorsed by the Sheriff and Police Alliance and the NRA.
John, speaking of redistricting and what your appointments are up in Raleigh, political maps have been a topic of conversation for a long time. What are your thoughts on where those maps are now? Good, or should they be redone?
Well, I'm vice chair of redistricting, so I was in the committee when the maps were being drawn, and I would say that they were done in a very fair manner. In fact, there was computers set up in the committee room, and different delegations, like from Wade County or Mecklenburg or wherever, Cumberland, could work those maps themselves to try to come up with something that would be acceptable to them. I remember particularly, I think there's 5 members from Mecklenburg County, all Democrats, and they actually drew that map of Mecklenburg County. It's hard when you have 120 members of anything to make everybody happy.
Of course.
But I thought there was a lot of give and take.
Mm-hmm. So should redistricting be done by legislators or by an independent, nonpartisan commission?
I have a hard time when I hear the word nonpartisan. That would be.
You don't believe it?
No, that would be in a perfect world. You'd have a nonpartisan committee that could sit down and do this. But I've seen too. There's just so more than ever, and I've been in politics since '98. The partisanship is worse now than it's ever been, and so here's my take on it. The electorate elect us to go represent them. Mm-hmm. So when they're not satisfied, they can bring us home. And so I think that the General Assembly needs to do its statutory duty and draw the maps. And it always switches. Sometimes the Democrats are in charge, sometimes the Republicans are in charge. So that's politics.
So obviously we have to talk about COVID-19. You and I both brought masks to this building here today. COVID-19 has brought a challenge to NC that those in Raleigh have never dealt with. In regard to closing the economy and then reopening, how do you rate the job our politicians are doing in dealing with the pandemic thus far?
Well, I think even on the federal and state level, a lot of good has been done for the citizenry. We are now just had our 3rd relief package, and I'll give you 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 quick statistics. $335 million to the North Carolina parents to help with remote learning cost. A total increase of $115 million to education through the COVID relief. $17 million in grants for exceptional children, an additional $45 million for small business grant program, mm-hmm. and then we've had the $200 increase in unemployment benefits. And one of the things I am most proud of is that the General Assembly, both Democrat and Republicans, bipartisanly invested $40 million to broadband and home connectivity. We are really working hard to get the rural areas connectivity, and we're going. I'm looking forward to that being accomplished. Mm-hmm. And then there's $50 million to the Lost Wages Assistance Program, mm-hmm. and I want to share this with the viewers or the listeners. From March to May, in 3 months, the Employment Security Commission processed more applications for unemployment or unemployment assistance than they did the 6 years previous.
Wow.
I can tell you that my legislative assistant and myself, both of our phones and computers, we were getting, I'd say at least a couple of thousand came through us, and right. People asking us for assistance because they just could not process such a load in a short period of time. But there was some desperation. I want to give an example of one young man. He called me and he said, "Representative Sauls, he was unemployed and he had filled out his application, and I think in this case he had been approved, but the money had not come." He said, "My wife and I have maxed out 2 credit cards. I have $8 in my pocket." Now, you can't. It's kind of like the starfish. You can't save them all, right. But we were able to call and get that young man and his wife some help, and we helped a lot of people. And then there's a lot that's had to wait. I've got a lady that's just contacted me last week, and she's desperate. So we're working on it.
So looking forward, other than COVID-19, what do you see as the most important issues coming up for the next term in the House?
Well, I think to me the most important thing is economic development. As you know, we've lowered the corporate income tax rate to 2.25%, right. And we've increased the standard deduction from $17,500 to $20,000 for every household. And so that's been a help to a lot of people. And because of our AAA bond rating, I think we're only one of 11 states, and all agencies recognize North Carolina's AAA bond rating. We have businesses coming in here, especially from the Northeast and the high tax area, and they're coming into North Carolina and creating jobs, and it's because of the policies we have in place. Even as a commissioner, I used to say the most important thing, I said everybody wants better schools, better highways, right. But you have none of that without economic development. It's the engine that drives the economy.
It funds it.
It funds it. And so I spent 8 years on the Lee County Economic Development Board, the last 2 as chair, 4 while I was in the commissioner and 4 when I was in the House the first go around.
For those of you that are just tuning in, you are listening to live candidate interviews for the NC House of Representatives, District 51. We are here with Republican candidate John Sauls. John, a sports complex bond is on the ballot this November for Lee County, as you well know. Give us your thoughts on the proposed sports complex and what it could mean for the county.
Well, first of all, John, I think it would be a wonderful thing for Lee County. I think it would be another economic engine that would help our county. But I want the listeners to know that with the Barack Fords coming, Aldentes, the Pfizer expansion, and I just heard that there's one of the company that's come brought about 200 jobs to one of the old warehouses Static Control had. Mm-hmm. I want this built without a tax increase. I have to support it without a tax increase because that's why we give the incentives. That's why we draw the people to Lee County. And especially during this season of the pandemic, people, hours being cut, lost jobs, the businesses not doing the revenue they were doing. The citizenry cannot take another tax increase. But I fully support it if it's either public, private, but without a tax increase. And I think it can be done with the growth we've had here, even our residential growth.
Well, and that's appropriate. Certainly I'm not an elected official, but if you speak with the folks at the county and the city level, projected revenues coming in from sales taxes are very good to fantastic this year, which beats the odds for our COVID-19 environment that we're in. So the folks that are elected and the county and the city manager can't promise that taxes will not be raised, but word is that they're hoping that they will not have to do a tax increase and that they can accommodate it without that.
Well, and I don't think that would keep it from coming, but it may have to be delayed a year or two so the revenues get where we can take it.
Yeah. So sickness and death have unfortunately been one of the results of the COVID-19 in North Carolina. Many more have been affected financially, losing jobs and reduction in hours. Many losing long-time businesses and lifelong investments and their dreams. How can the state help with this group, and does the state bear any responsibility?
I think the state has done well in trying to have the policies, to protect us during these bad times. We have a rainy day fund. We've been helping, doing assistance for people through the unemployment, and we were in a strange situation that we'd never seen before with this pandemic, and overall, I think our economy is doing so much better than we first thought. COVID, this COVID, naturally, it's deadly to certain people. Mm-hmm. It's highly contagious, but I don't think it's as deadly as as the scientists first thought it was. I know at least 9 or more people that have recovered. One had a little trouble breathing, but 2 of them told me the worst thing they had was the loss of taste and smell. But it's a deadly disease. But I don't think it's as bad as we anticipated.
So over 1 million North Carolinians under the age of 65 have no health insurance. What can state government do to make sure everyone has access to health care?
Well, I believe that the insurance should be able to be bought over state lines. I think it should be opened up, and that's a free market, and that's what I believe in. And I don't think 2 or 3 companies in North Carolina that have it now locked in. And just, I remember when I went to the house the first time in 2003, I think it was the next year, the insurance premiums went up 30%.
Wow.
At one lick.
Yeah.
Now, because they had the monopoly enough to do it. So open it up to the free market system. I think that would drive, I really believe that would put a lot of people having hospital insurance and being able to afford it that cannot now.
To make it more competitive environment.
Absolutely.
So the General Assembly recently approved an incentive package to bring a United States Golf Association office to the Pinehurst area. Not discussing this package specifically, but what is your opinion of using tax dollars for incentive packages offered from the state or local governments to bring industry and or development to our area?
Well, I've asked that question a lot naturally by being in Raleigh. First of all, I wish there was no such thing as incentives. Mm-hmm. But somebody somewhere did it the first time, and the company came because of incentives. So their neighbors saw what happened, and they started it. Now it's all over the country, and you're either in the game or not. So I don't see where we have an option. Some argue that, well, we have a great university system. We have the workforce, white collar and blue collar. We do have all that.
We do, yeah.
But all you had to do is look back when Mercedes was looking at North Carolina back in the day. I think maybe even Governor Hunt was governor. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But Mercedes was looking at North Carolina, and we had the same universities then, same workforce, and they go to Alabama.
Yeah.
You know, and so what I tell people is a company like that, or these big companies, can go anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the world, really, and the workforce will follow them. The engineers, whoever they need, will be there. So it's one of those things where you just have to be in the game if you want to grow.
Yep. So more nationally, but even locally, law enforcement and first responders have taken a hit in public confidence with calls for defunding, and some leaders have seemed to encourage less community support for law enforcement. Do you see it as a responsibility of the legislature to rebuild this respect for our policing?
I see it as a responsibility of the mayors of these cities. The mayor of Raleigh, having curfews that last till 11 o'clock is ridiculous. You know, if you look at the protesting, it's peaceful for an hour or two.
Correct.
And after that, it goes haywire. So why not, you know, during that time of upheaval, have a 2 or 3 hour maximum and cut it off, but say from 6 to 9 or something, instead of 11 p.m. No, it's like your mother said, nothing good happens, you know, late at night. So, and listen, and I hate to pick on this, but this is a thing I saw on TV. It's an example I can use for your question. The mayor said that the Raleigh police used tear gas and it agitated the protesters. So they weren't going to use it the next time. I beg to differ. I don't think the Raleigh police just shot off tear gas because they wanted to. They did it to disperse the crowd, to stop the destruction. And so, but she stopped use. Then the very next week, about a week ago, she said she was going to send the police to the protest with no riot gear. I mean, you know, it's not the police throwing bottles and bricks.
Right.
So I am a 100% law enforcement supporter, and I am 100% for the right to free speech, the right to protest, but definitely you do not have the right to destroy another person's property or injure a first responder or law enforcement officer.
Well, so to dig a little deeper, what can be done to improve policing and to regain the confidence of those that have turned negative toward the police?
Naturally, you got to sit down and talk. You know, it's all goes local. It's not. It has to be local, from the mayor to the county commissioners. They have to take the lead in this with the sheriffs and the police chiefs, and sit down and meet with the leaders of the community to see what they think needs to be done. To those that are offended or upset about something, let's find out exactly what it is, what could be done to fix it. But I want to commend Lee County. I think we had 3 protests and and pretty civil, and the message got out to everyone, and that's the way it should be. So I'm very proud of the way our protesters protested.
So farming is still an important part of the district that you represent. What do you see ahead as the biggest challenges facing this group, and how can you help forge the future for our farmers in North Carolina?
I have talked to some farmers, and the top 2 things that concerns them is deregulation of some chemicals.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll finish. I want to answer it in 2 parts: deregulation and labor cost. That's what's hurting them more than anything. I grew up on a farm, and I remember we were custom farmers. We put out liquid nitrogen to other farmers' corn, and we mixed atrazine back then. It was a powder, and you mixed it with water, and you put it into the nitrogen tank, and they got it. Not only did the corn get nitrogen, but it got weed control.
Oh, yeah.
But when you start regulating some of the chemicals, then when labor is already one of the major costs for farming, and then you regulate certain chemicals, and if it's bad for the environment or if it's dangerous for health, I understand it, but there's got to be a really close balance there to keep the farmers in business. And then the other thing is they've had a lot of I'm tongue-tied here, lawsuits for frivolous lawsuits.
Frivolous?
Yeah, I got it.
Frivolous lawsuits.
Yeah, that's it. For they move out the country, next to a farm, and then sue them because they have smells from the cows or the pigs. So they've been sued, literally sued for that, and we've tried to have some legislation done to kind of negate some of it. I mean, if you're going to build your house beside of a farm that's already there, then don't expect them to change.
So probably last question in a couple minutes we have left, and this is a big question. What specifically can the state do to help rebuild our economy in North Carolina after COVID-19, whenever that after is?
Well, I think we just have to keep looking at those that are in need the most and try to help those. I totally believe that once these restrictions are lifted and the restaurants are able to go back full speed. There was a business here in Lee County. I got a call, and they had a fitness center that they had taken savings and paid to stay open, and then when they were allowed to go to just 30%,
right,
they had to lock the doors. 30%. You can't have 30% of your revenue and stay in business. And I really, really believe, and I've said this already, I believe the closer you get to the election, the more restrictions will be lifted, and it's playing right out, just like I predicted.
It is,
and I think it's time. With people wearing masks, social distancing, to turn these businesses loose. I mean, and there has to be some personal responsibility, and I don't think anybody wants to run out here and get COVID.
True. I guess there has to be a balance, doesn't
there? There has to be a balance.
Scientific data and what folks in the local communities are allowing.
Yeah.
Certainly it's handed down by the state government first.
Well, the governor first.
The governor, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, John, thank you for your time today. Thank you for coming in and talking with us. We enjoyed getting to know you and know more about some of your policy issues. I'd like to thank Sandhills Broadcasting and The Rant, and also, again, thank John Sauls, Republican, for the NC House District 51. We're going to take a short 2-minute break, and when we return, we're going to talk with Democratic candidate and State House, Jason Kane. So stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages.